Hi, everyone. Lovely to see you. Thanks. Thanks to those of you who are joining us. My name is Ariel Molino. I'm the Chief Convener with Pollinate Impact. I am based in Nairobi, Kenya. That's where I'm joining from. Really excited to be having this conversation today. I think we had our last CSR engagement session in March, and I think there was so much interest that we decided to do a deeper dive again this month with our friends and partners at Assist Asia. So as most of you would know by now, Pollinate Impact is a network of impact incubators across the global South. And we aim to really mature the impact incubation ecosystem to help you all do your work better and more effectively. And we know that fundraising is one of the biggest challenges and sustainability that you all as incubators and accelerators have. And that's why we work with the Assist Asia team to not only surface grant opportunities for our members, but to do some of these learning sessions on a regular basis to help build your capacity to fundraise and get some of that much needed money in to keep funding your program. So before we jump in with Sreeni and Joshua, we have a few check-in questions, and I will ask my colleague Rod. Okay, great. So Rod is sharing her screen. And Rod, I hope I have the right one. I'm just going to paste the link in. Tell me if I have, in case I have the wrong thing here. So you can join the mentee poll. I've just put it in the chat. Add the mentee number at the top, which is 85399553, or you can just click directly on the link. I will copy it again because it looks like we still have some folks joining. So you can just click on the link in the chat. The first question we want to know is where are you folks joining us from? Different countries have different regulations and policies around CSR funding, and we are lucky that Sreeni has vast experience across India, Southeast Asia, and Sub-Saharan Africa. So we want to make sure that Sreeni is tailoring his expertise to the folks that we have in the room. So great. So we have a couple of people from Ghana, quite a number of people from India, which we know has a very strong CSR engagement by law. So great. Rod, we can go to the next question and we'll just keep things moving. If by any chance you're having trouble getting into the Mentimeter, you can always also put your responses directly into the chat. The next question we have is we just want to know who's in the room with us today. I'm assuming we have a lot of incubators and accelerators, but maybe we have some consultants or some community hubs, maybe some media. I don't know, consultants, entrepreneurs. Okay, consultant, couple of incubators, accelerators. Great. Okay, perfect, which is exactly what we anticipated. So lovely to have you all with us. Rod, we can keep going on to the next one. This next question, as I mentioned, we had part 1 of CSR engagement a couple of months ago in March, and we just want to know if those of you who are in the room had already attended the first one or not. Okay, I see we have one who has not. Again, so for Sreeni might recap a few things, but we really wanted to take this opportunity to go more in depth on what we had talked about back in March. So we don't want to be redundant from what you heard last time, but I can see we have a few more people who don't have context. So Sreeni will give some context from the last time, but we'll try and really dig in to help new insights and building on what we learned in March. So that's fantastic. So thanks for that. Now, we want to hear from you, harder question. And we'd want to understand what's the biggest challenge that you're experiencing when it comes to accessing CSR funding. So it could be a word, it could be a phrase, but we just want to know what are some of the biggest challenges that you have when it comes to this. And I'm going to add the Menti poll link back in the chat for those of you who are just joining us. You can also just add the code at the top that you can see on our screen. If nobody responds, then we can assume that you are all CSR funding experts and probably don't need to be on on the session right now. But I am sure you guys have challenges in accessing funding. So I don't know, maybe it's finding the right person, maybe it's understanding what opportunities are out there and how to engage. Okay, great. So we have one. So actually being able to set up meetings without necessarily a referral. So some, how do we do basically cold outreach for a smaller organization? It sounds like. So I think that's fantastic. Any other challenges that anyone would want to share? The more challenges we have, the more Sreeni can make sure we're responding to those directly. Oh, the lengthy process it takes to get the deal done. Yes, I think that's also well noted. Maybe one or two more challenges before we dig in. No? Okay, well, you can feel free to add it in the chat as we go if you need some time to think about. And maybe you're new to CSR funding and maybe you're here to learn, and that's okay too. Which and what CSR funding to tap. So really great. So someone who's really looking at how to landscape this. So fantastic. So great, Rod, I think we can keep going. And we have one last question. And this one is tell us what strategies you use currently to build partnerships with CSR funders. And if you don't currently have them, tell us that too. Tell us you're new to this. Maybe this is your first time starting to explore CSR funding. That will help Sreeni and Joshua get a base of where we're at with the folks in the room. And for those of you who are just joining, I saw Bob. Good to see you, Bob. I'm just putting the Menti link in the chat, but you can also just go to menti.com and put the number in that you see at the top of the screen. Sorry, we have a few more folks joining. Any strategies that you want to share, or otherwise we'll assume that you guys don't employ any strategies and we are very new to this. So let us know. But we want to make sure that Sreeni can go far and wide. So I want to make sure we are focusing his responses. So maybe what we'll do, Rod, is we can leave this up for now as people sort of want to think about this and share. And again, if you don't currently have strategies, let us know and just say we're starting. Maybe while we collect more of these, in the interest of time, Joshua and Sreeni, I would love for you guys to introduce yourselves and take it over from here. Yeah, I'll hand it over to both of you.
Sure. Thank you very much, and good evening to all of you, and good afternoon, good morning, depends on where you are, and welcome. I noticed there was at least one or two of you who have already attended this session before, quite a few new faces, all the more important that we make sure that the folks who have come in the past do not find this training redundant. So we will make sure that we address newer points for you. But for the ones who are new, I'm sure you would find quite a few of the basics that we are going to discuss today quite relevant. But we will also make sure that we are able to add more context to everything we are going to discuss. Unlike the last time, and I'll get back to the introduction shortly, I just wanted to mention that we tried to keep this session quite tight so that there's a lot more interaction. Okay, so I expect once we start and go through the training or interaction, we will be able to chat either directly. You can unmute yourself and ask questions, or put in your questions in the chat box. By way of introduction, my name is Sreeni. I'm based in the Philippines. I should say working for an NGO. So, I in many ways, while many of you are accelerators incubators, some of you are beneficiary organizations, few of you consultants. We are pretty much in the same boat as somebody who looks and seeks for funding support. Okay. However, in the last 20 years, we've sort of got it fairly well organized. Okay, as a small local organization, that's the key here. Okay, there are large players, but in our case, we would fall under that small local player bracket. But we are able to, the last 20 years, work in over 25 countries, establish offices in over 5 countries. As Ariel mentioned, we worked extensively in Africa, extensively in South Asia, including Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, and of course, we have an office in India. And almost in all countries of Southeast Asia, except for the extremely well-developed countries like Singapore, Malaysia, or Brunei, we've got ongoing completed projects in Indonesia, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia. We do have an office in Vietnam, Cambodia, etc. So what I'm going to bring to you is the familiarity of the landscape, both geographically and the familiarity with donors. So we have been, and we are currently working with over 200 corporations, okay? Ongoing projects maybe with about 50 to 75 corporations. So CSR funding, okay? I did notice one or two of you talking about the deal cycles are very long. And if you are a small NGO or a small organization, we are not able to get the right referrals or the right connects, or it's only through referrals that you're able to get the connects. We used to be like that exactly 20 years ago, right? But we were able to break that mold over a period of time. And very importantly, using systematic methods. And these systematic methods today are much more accessible to nonprofits like you, or incubators like you, or implementing organizations like you, compared to what was available to somebody like me 20 years ago. Because the accessibility was an issue, internet connectivity was an issue, availability of data was an issue, but all of that is not there. However, as they say, where there's a wealth of knowledge, there is also a poverty of attention. So you have all the tools that are available, many of them for free, but you're confused between which one to choose, or you are fascinated by a tool today, fascinated by another tool tomorrow. It could be a trend today, another trend tomorrow, and this is what keeps all of us in oscillation. One of the things that we will need, both as an incubator and the incubatee, is a single-minded focus. And this is something that typically corporations or any funding agency would support. Before we dive deep into the program, I will show you at a global level, particularly where data is available, at a global level, how funding generally flows. Okay, and you would notice that around 25% of global, we'll get into the deck itself later, Joshua, but I just wanted to say about 25%, I would say, more or less, give or take, in fact, bordering on 30% of funding for any social cause comes from either a corporation or a corporate foundation, or in some cases, a family foundation. And usually these families or individuals are founders of large corporations. So for example, you would get funding from Microsoft, but you might also get funding from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which is, Bill Gates was the founder of Microsoft, but the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, or the Bill Gates Foundation, is a completely different entity. So when you add up all these people, both family foundations, corporations, and corporate foundations. So in the case of Microsoft, they have an organization called Microsoft Philanthropies, which is their sort of corporate foundation. So you have around 30%. Now, immaterial of where you are, whether you are in Africa, the various countries of Africa, whether I notice I noticed there are folks from Maradeka here. Okay, Maradeka, uh, uh, at least some of them are good friends of ours, the people I would know from the long days ago. We, in fact, hit joint projects together. One as late as 2 years ago, which was a EU-funded project on skills development. I see there's somebody from Maradeka. I saw a couple of others, at least from the Philippines, quite a few from India. So bottom line is, irrespective of where are you from, you could keep this in the back of your mind about if there's $100 to be given, around 30% of that money could typically come from corporate. So we cannot ignore this. As much as it seems tedious, as much as it seems to take a lot of time, as much as you feel that right now you don't have the right connect, you cannot ignore it, right? So the idea would be, what can we do to get ourselves much more capable to achieve this, to access this funding, rather than avoid it because it is very difficult. Probably around 10% of the funding comes from international donors. It seems like it's a very small amount, but in terms of volume, it's quite a lot. And accessing those funds tend to be much more complicated. If you think CSR is complicated, those funds are much more complicated. And then finally, last but not the least, and I will show this in the terms of diagrams, around 50 to 60% of the money that you get into social impact actually comes from individuals. Okay. Now, many of the smaller organizations may not be ready for that, even though it seems to be the most easiest. But these are small donors, or donors who give small amounts of money, but everybody gives. Okay. So, for example, giving $10 every month to the church, $20 every month to your local feeding program. So those kinds of things happen a lot. And in fact, when you add all of that, that's about 50 to 60% of your total charity funding. Now, unfortunately, most organizations are not organized to receive that kind of money. Very few are organized for that. A perfect example is UNICEF. You would see people from UNICEF in the malls, in the street corners, raising money. You would see people from Red Cross raising money. You would see local NGOs, some of the larger ones in your countries, also using those techniques to raise money. So I would think that as a small organization with limited resources, this, what we call face-to-face fundraising or online fundraising, seemingly simple, is actually very resource intensive. So I would not touch that 50 to 60%. I would rather look for multilateral, bilateral funding of the 10 to 15% and corporate funding of 25 to 30% as your immediate target. So if you were to make a plan for the next 6 months, I would say I would rather focus on trying to get this. Now, what could you be doing to focus or improve yourself? That's what this training is all about. I won't call it a training because we are all adults. What I'm going to do is share my insights based on practice. Because we work a lot on developing capacities for other civil society organizations, other NGOs. We work with about 65 smaller community-based organizations who work on HIV/AIDS. Now, we are helping them with communication, financial management, fundraising, project management, etc., etc. We realize that these are people who are highly committed, who want to make a change, but don't either have the resources and certainly don't have the capability, the managerial management capability to slowly scale their programs. That's where we come in and help. Now, we do this in many cases as a social outreach program, but sometimes we also are funded by other multilateral institutions to train these organizations over 6 months or a year or things like that. Okay, so that is the context. My colleague Joshua, who's also based in the Philippines, has helped me put this together. He's been working with Pollinate Impact to make sure potential good opportunities are curated specifically from a Pollinate perspective and provided to you on a weekly, bi-weekly basis. Now, very recently, we had a discussion with the Pollinate team, which works with you guys extensively, and looking at ways to further improve this curation process and make it very, very, very meaningful for each one of you as an individual organization, so that the right grants are provided to you, the right funding opportunities are provided to you, so that the little resources and the time that you put in is more meaningful. So Joshua and his team leads that effort. So you would probably not know him or his team members directly, but you probably are going through some of the grant opportunities he provides. Okay, so I'll actually officially start with the program. Unless anybody has any questions at this point of time. I see about 20 plus participants, okay? And except for Ghana, I didn't notice who else is there from Africa. I see Philippines, I saw India, I saw Ghana. Road, if you just look up the, yeah.
We do have one. I think I saw Apero. They're in Kenya. Bob
Okay.
and Stacy. I see Joy and Jerry. That I know is a Kikuyu name, so I assume she's in Kenya. But yeah, maybe if you guys just want to put in the chat if you joined a bit late and missed the check-in, let us know where you're coming from so that Sreeni can tailor his his comments based on where you all are.
Correct. Yeah. In fact, we did extensive work in Nairobi. I mean, we work a lot with the UN Habitat there. And at one point, I even had an office there. So it is not a very unfamiliar place. And then
I see one more also from Kenya, Sreeni Zawadi. Hi, Zawadi from Ongoza. So yeah, I think we have Kenya and Ghana seem like they're fairly well.
Yeah. Okay. Of course, we've also done work in Accra years ago, not as extensive as I would have liked, but I know Ghana has changed quite a bit now that oil has been discovered and things like that. I used to come there before that, and that was more than 10 years ago, 12 years ago. Yeah. So fantastic, and I'm glad to see people from India. The case of India and CSR is going to be unique because of this unique law that is available in India. Something that others are considering. For example, in Indonesia, there is now a movement from the government saying they also are going to mandate a similar CSR law. Actually, whether it's 2%, what it is something we have to wait and see. So Indonesia has got that. Philippines doesn't have it, but Philippines also, particularly the listed companies, are sort of generally expected to do something proper because they need to report annually their ESG reports, and they would like to show that they are doing some social impact work. So because of those requirements, they invariably are spending some money actually. So most of the corporates actually do CSR. The question is whether it's structured or not structured. If it's structured, good for you guys. If it's not structured, that's when I think you may have to leverage your connections and things like that. Okay, so it's good to know who everybody is. And we will move forward right now, please. If we go to the second slide, it gives you the outline. So we're just going to have three major talking points today, right? We're going to define CSR. I think most of you understand it, set the context. I'll tell you, I've already mentioned it to you before, but I'll just quickly scan and show you what are the thematic areas that typically people are interested in, how much money goes into CSR. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about an engagement framework, particularly given that many of you are incubators and you are sort of caught between, you know, a rock and a hard place, as they say. You are not the end incubator who is actually creating the impact. You are an enabler. Okay. In some cases, you are set up as a private company or a social enterprise. You may or may not be set up as a nonprofit, which has its advantages and disadvantages. So the question is, how do you fit into the equation? Because you are the prime movers. In fact, we should be funding you, the enablers, so that you in turn enable the incubators, and the incubators in turn create solutions that create a meaningful impact, right? So that we'll see how the incubators can work together in tandem. Okay. In some cases, the incubator can be sort of the intermediary. You can get two ideas, one each from two different incubators, and put together a more wholesome proposal, which corporates may like. Something which has got an access to finance, something which has got something to do with agriculture, for example. So maybe one incubator is doing something related to agriculture, another incubator is working on finance. But if we can bring these two together and talk of a solution which would improve economic livelihood of people in that community, so you could get a funding. The incubator is managing that funding, but both the incubators still get a share of the implementation money. So we will explore those kinds of things in the engagement framework. I've already mentioned it. I think we are going to discuss in parts. For some of you, the one or two of you who attended this earlier, it may seem a little redundant. What we want is a very, very consistent approach to CSR. There is come rain, come sun, morning, evening, Monday, Friday, no change in your approach. You be consistent, you are going to see results. That's something we follow. We consistently meet with at least 5 companies every week. I'll show you all those data. So on how we manage this data. Funny thing is, most of these tools are available for free. Okay. And you could use these tools, collect data, start putting it, because it gives you a very nice way to analyze the work you do. Otherwise, at some point, you also get tired and wonder, hey, is it all worth it? So I think the use of technology, the use of tools and platforms in delivering this work, more importantly in doing this sale, becomes equally important. We'll talk about that in the strategic approach. And I look forward to having an extensive Q&A if possible. So we're going to take about, at the most, totally about 45 minutes. Yeah. Okay, let's go on. Joshua, please. Further. Yeah. So CSR is not new. Started as early as the 70s. Okay. It has taken various forms. People have been accused of, trying to do CSR as a greenwashing, as all sorts of reasons and things like that. But over the years, it has matured. Okay, so it's been about 30 to 50 years that it has matured. There are corporations who have been doing social impact work for over 100 years. Okay, so if there is a company which is in a remote location in Kenya, okay, and they realize that if they have to thrive, if they have to prosper, if they have to get the right set of employees, it is in their interest that the surrounding areas are also taken care of, whether it is in terms of education, whether it's in terms of healthcare. So some companies which had that forward-looking thinking were always doing it even before. The founders who made money, using the resources of that area, would at some point start feeling that, hey, I need to do something back for the society, particularly the area where we are based, right? So that is how this started. But over the years, it has become much more structured. Over the years, it has come to a point where companies look at this as a very, very good strategy to integrate as part of their overall business strategy. It becomes a very good technique to attract young talent. They say, hey, you know what? This is the business we are in. However, we also do all these other social impact work. Our materials we source are done very, very ethically, is done making sure all environmental considerations are well taken care of. So what happens is a young graduate who comes out of a university automatically feels very attracted towards a company which seems to have these kinds of good practices. So today, CSR is evolved from just doing social good, but it's become at the core of running a business, right? It is something that everybody wants to do and talk about. Now, some organizations, like I mentioned, have a very, very structured approach of doing it. They have a CSR committee, they have a CSR manager, they have people from the business who actively participated in, some who sort of outsource the whole thing to either one manager or outsource it to a third party, etc. So all kinds of folks make the world. So it happens in our families as well. You know, we have 4 or 5 siblings, each one has got different priorities, each one has got a different outlook. So it's very common to assume the same thing happens with corporations. So just because you had a bad experience with one corporation doesn't mean you will have such a bad experience with another corporation. So that is why I told you, you've got to be very focused and consistent in the way you would go and approach these companies with a never say never kind of an attitude. Be very proactive and keep engaging. And you know, when you take companies in Kenya, for example, large companies are there, man, both technology companies, both manufacturing companies, services companies, traders, distributors, IT and telco companies, very, very big. Same in Ghana, same in India. India, you don't even need to talk about it. There's probably thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of corporations. India, the challenge is obviously the sheer size. And if you are an organization based in one part of India, the idea would be probably just focus on that area, because, you know, just the travel is going to be very expensive if you are trying to hit everybody in the market. If you are based in Delhi and somebody invites you for a meeting to Chennai, you know, going up and down plus accommodation and things like that, you probably will end up spending 20,000 with no guarantee that you will get that business. So I would say start small, start in a very focused manner in the location you are in. In much smaller countries and countries where the economic power is limited to the capital, or the majority of the economic activities are limited to capital, there is an advantage. Okay, so there's an advantage. So this trend of corporations becoming much more responsible is a trend that is not going to change. Okay, so it is going to continue. And very importantly, it is something that is very critical for people in Asia, because slowly the multilaterals and bilaterals are losing interest in Asia. I won't say that's not the right word, but they feel that a country like Philippines or Vietnam or India are becoming economically better off. So they would rather spend their money in lesser developed countries, number one. Number two, in other priority areas which are struck by war, strife, and things like that. And you know what I'm talking about. This an ongoing war in Ukraine, and the money that typically Germany spends in Southeast Asia, which is close to about $50 million every year to $75 million every year, has been stopped since 2022. So just because there's a war in Ukraine, boom, $75 million that used to flow every year has stopped since 2022. So it's been already now two and a half years. So over $150 million that we would have typically gotten as grants has stopped. Okay. So, however, Mercedes-Benz or Bosch or Bayer all the German companies which are working here continue to work here, grow. So their commitment to the Philippines or Vietnam or Thailand will still continue to be there. So I think betting on corporations is probably far better in the long term. When you compare Kenya to maybe a couple of other countries in Africa, Kenya is probably slightly better off in the income categories, right? So it's probably right now a middle income country. Okay, so you will see that shift of donor funding even within Africa. So Africa is not obviously just a single landmass and a single country. There are 50 countries. South Africa has got a different economy. Kenya has got a different economy. Ghana has got a different economy. Then when you were to compare it with Cote d'Ivoire or Ethiopia or Somalia, the economic conditions are different. So even amongst the donors, you're going to see a shift within Africa. So one thing that's going to happen is as your economy picks up, a lot of foreign companies or corporations are going to come in. Your own local corporations are going to grow, which means they will now have more money to spend. So when you look at the next 10 years, the next 20 years, I think CSR is going to become a major contributing force for social impact. Whether you are doing it right now or not, I would recommend you start getting prepared for it. Okay. So the next CSR obviously is the corporate social responsibility. Some people call it now corporate responsibility. Some people call it sustainability. Some people call it ESG, which is environment, social, and governance. So, but all of that are the same thing in different titles. So you can see here some key areas of focus that any corporation is interested. Whether it's they have a blanket area called poverty alleviation. Sometimes it's everything to do with livelihoods. Healthcare is something very, 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 very critical for them. Water, sanitation, and hygiene, highly critical for them. Education and skills, highly critical. I would say if we were to talk about the top 3 donor-friendly themes, it's always been health, education, and skills, and I would say WASH, for example. Of course, climate change is a huge area, okay, but it's so huge. There are subcomponents within climate. Some people would say, hey, water is under climate, which is true. But here, when we talk about water, we are talking from a hygiene perspective, right? Hygiene, portability, and things like that. It's not about the pollution, but it also falls under pollution, okay? So disaster management is obviously another important area, but it also comes under climate change in some cases. So these are your major areas. Health, obviously, very, very big. Education and skills, very, very big. And I would say WASH is equally big. But some organizations say, oh, poverty alleviation as an overall catch it all. But it's just important for you to know that these are the thematic areas and there are percentages of support typically people would get. You can see that it's not given in percentages. The green area, poverty, health, WASH is the major chunk, followed by education and skills. Okay, rural development, which includes livelihood, agriculture, and things like that, is the third big area. Okay, so you can see that these are the major areas which take up close to about 70% of the overall funding as well. Okay, now there are cross-cutting areas, and this is a big advantage. And for many of you who are incubators or incubators who are providing technology-based solutions, it's a perfect opportunity, because you could get when you use technology, you could be addressing agriculture, you could be addressing anything, but technology is a cross-cutting activity. When you focus on women, particularly, or marginalized people, indigenous people, as we call them, they all are part of inclusion, which is a very, very important aspect. So if you have 2 projects that a manager is evaluating, and both the projects are on education and skills development. But if one project says beyond what we do in education and skills development, we will ensure 25% of the beneficiary are young women, I can guarantee you that project will probably be looked at more favorably. So one thing in your mind, for the solutions that you provide, you must make the solutions as inclusive as possible. Okay. Now, this also includes things like people with disabilities. Okay, but that gets a little bit more specific, but generic things like women or gender, okay, LGBTQ prioritization, the 65 NGOs that we are talking about are NGOs which work specifically on HIV/AIDS, but specifically targeting LGBTQ folks who are of LGBTQ orientation. Okay, so they are marginalized, they are isolated, they are stigmatized, and on top of it, they are also victims of HIV/AIDS. So so when a donor looks at that kind of intersectionality, they tend to favor it. So it's always good to know. You guys are very, very smart, but use that same smarts, if I may, in the way you present information to the donor, whether it's a corporate donor, a corporate foundation, or a family foundation. So you must have data to back you up, and you will have all the data from your statistics office or from your local city government. Yeah. So these are some key areas of focus. Quickly to the next slide, Joshua. Okay, so I mentioned this already. So CSR, okay, theoretically, it's all from corporates. It's exclusively from corporates. But I'm including these three categories because somehow there is a very fine line dividing them, and some of the corporations keep mixing this up. Okay, so I would say when you're targeting, look at all the three. Yeah, corporates, corporate foundation. Is it Vodacom? Vodacom is the telco in Kenya, right? If memory serves me right. It's not Vodafone, or is it Vodafone? Anyway, I'm not able to remember, or is it South Africa? I keep forgetting. I know Airtel is there and all that, but if you would have the corporation and you would also have the foundation, and both of them typically tend to support CSR. Somehow they speak to each other. They're theoretically not supposed to, but somehow they tend to speak to each other. Usually the CEO of the corporation also sits in the board, or at least is part of the board, even though there may be an executive director in the corporate foundation. But some old organizations like Ford Foundation and things like that, have really spun off and made it separate. But otherwise, they are, I would say, part of the same ecosystem. And I think when you look at them as addressable targets, I would say look at all the three. So the corporations, the corporate foundations, and in many, many cases, in most cases, the owners who may have set up. I use the word may. It's not always the case, but in many cases, they have set up a family foundation, either in the name of their mother or in the name of the family. They have set up a foundation. And invariably, they tend to be funding things which are, you can't take away, no? Which are somehow related to their original business. For example, just in the last 1 week, we received 2 grants from Denmark from a family foundation. But the family foundation, it's called the PDJ Foundation, Paul Dew Jensen Foundation. Paul Dew Jensen set up a company called Grundfos. It's available in every country that is attending today. The Grundfos makes pumps. Okay, so Grundfos also funds us as a corporation. But on top of it, the Paul Dew Jensen, which is the founder's name, that foundation also funds. But what do they fund? Everything related to water, because pumps are used to pump water, and that's what their interest is, water. Okay. Now it could be about availability, accessibility of water in a community. It could be about water accessibility in a farm. but ultimately water. So you can see that the family foundation, as much as it's an independent entity, somehow they are related to the corporation. But in rare case, not in rare cases, in some cases, the family foundation tends to be doing something completely different from what their original corporation used to be. But invariably, they're all linked, and I would say target them together, because the family foundations are run by former CEOs, former owners. So they are very corporate in their thinking. So the way you approach them, the way you present things to them needs to be very professional. So then you are going to be very successful with these people, actually. Okay. So these are your typical CSR donors. And as I told you in the next slide, you will realize that around 30% of this funding, comes from these guys, around 30%, 19% by foundation, 9% by bequest, which is usually also family offices or family foundations, and finally about 4% by corporation. It seems small, but here, look at that. Yeah, that's almost around 80 billion comes from these people alone. Yeah, 80 billion comes from these people. But the majority, like I told you, around 60 to 70% comes from individuals. Seems easy. In fact, that's the reason why many NGOs start up, because they know they can get a few friends, few people they know to give you, but it's never going to be consistent. So if you want to have a plan and you want to scale up, you want to make a bigger impact, you cannot depend on only individuals. Yeah, you need to have a very good system to target individuals, okay, including mailers, follow-throughs, and things like that, for which you need a lot of resources. So before you go there, you go for this 30% and do it in an organized manner. By the way, this data is from 2022, and it comes only from the US. Now, you may be asking and saying, oh, but this is not applicable to us. I would just say, use this as a basis, okay? What you want to remember is about 60 to 70% comes from individuals, and about 30% comes from the corporations. Yeah, the 30% comes from corporates, family foundations, etc. Now let's continue to the next section. Yeah, so these are some names of foundations. I don't want to take too much of this time to go into it. Okay, now let's talk about two slides. Yeah, two slides here, which are very critical given your context. By the way, the presentation has been structured in a way that it is very, very easy to understand. I'm not just saying this because it's the slides. If you go to section C, which is the next section, you will see there's a flow chart, and any of you as an individual who goes back tomorrow to the office can actually start using the flow chart and start applying it instantly. Okay, so okay, it will say, okay, prepare standard letters, prepare your target list, and things like that. It's a well-tested method, friends. Okay, we have probably about 4 to 5 colleagues who exclusively do this work only, what we call lead generation work. They keep on sending out those 20 to 30 email contacts every week. Invariably, within the next 3 to 4 weeks, 50% of them will convert into meetings. So if you do this every week, suddenly there's a team of 3 people who are loaded with meetings every week. And as you do these meetings and you start answering questions from these organizations, you will also start to realize what are the questions they ask, what are their concerns about you as an organization. So you could start preparing yourself for better representation. If you do this for 3 months, at the end of 3 months, it does not matter whether you win a contract or not. What you will know is the questions they ask you, the things that you need to be prepared for the next 3 months. There onwards, you will start winning contracts. There's no secret formula here. If you do this consistently, you will work. But let's talk about you as an incubator, because many of you are here as an incubator. Suddenly going out to a donor or a CSR donor or any donor for that matter, and saying that, hey, we are an intermediary, we are an accelerator, we in turn help others, they are not able to picture this properly. So what you're telling them is, I am a teacher, fund me, because my job is to educate a lot of young people, and they will change the world. Okay. And so what you're doing in effect is teaching, funding the person who is going to ultimately enable these young people. That is, that's the analogy, right? So it's an argument which has a lot of question marks in it. Okay, because they want to validate you guys, they want to look at who are your students, are you actually doing a good job? So there's a lot of things. That's where, you, in your cohort of 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 incubators, you could actually co-create solutions, high level ones, just a framework, just a single slide, 2 slides. And when you talk to them, you talk to them from a solution mindset, not just that I'm going to train, but rather I'm going to work with this particular incubator to provide this particular solution. We will provide the governance, we will provide the financial management, we will provide the program management, the incubator will do the technical management, delivery, and that's how these we two will work together, and you can fund us, or rather you can fund me, because I will be the ones who will provide the governance. Now that is a better argument than you going and saying, just fund me for helping others. You better have a particular solution, whether it's on access to finance, access to agriculture, whatever it is. So if you look at it, the incubator, your role is as a catalyst. Now, catalysts are typically not funded, but you can set your narrative in such a way that they will find it very attractive. And to set that narrative, you need to bring the incubator into the picture. Like I told you, right at the onset, you could be getting 2-3 incubators as part of a single larger solution. When I say larger solution, it could be as simple as enabling farmers to improve their productivity, thereby improving their livelihood. For that, you need technology. Maybe one incubator has got a technology for that. Another incubator has got some products for that. So you could add that person also. So you're talking about an ecosystem rather than a single point, right? So that is how it will help. So here are some of your arguments that you could put, by working with you guys as a center part, you can reduce transaction costs. They don't need to go and check on these 3 incubators, because you would do the governance part. In this part, and there'll be a single point of contact for the corporation. So the corporation just talks to Bob, or talks to Chakawa, or talks to CJ. Okay, so they just speak to you, and you in turn actually speak to not just the incubators, but the end beneficiaries. So you take the side of the donor to make sure that your donor's interests are protected. So suddenly, even though you are also friends with the incubators, you play the role of being a person who provides governance. That's a very, very useful thing. Okay. Sometimes the incubators are very passionate and they know only their technology, their solution. They cannot talk about the bigger picture. The incubators can talk about the bigger picture. You can have data which talks about the whole area and things like that. So this is a big advantage to being an incubator and still being the one who asks for the money. It seems tough, but it is not at all tough. Okay. If we go to the next slide so that we can come back to this again later. Okay. So incubators, it is very clear. It is the case is very simple, but let me be very clear. The donors, in this case, corporations, don't have time, don't have resources to manage individual incubators, right? So they would rather be talking to one organization who in turn will manage the incubators, right? So, and very importantly, the incubators who may be very technically strong may not have governance mechanisms. That is what the incubator can provide. But no solution is perfect without the technical solution, and that's what the incubators have. And from that perspective, you are ideally placed as an incubator accelerator to be the catalyst. That's what I'm trying to say. Actually, so I need the accelerators now to think. You cannot simply go on blindly and ask for money. I want to help 10 incubators. So could you fund us? Which is what you actually want, but that is not going to be exciting to the donor. What you're going to say is, I'm going to work with 10 organizations to fix a problem related to agriculture, fix a problem related to health and health and sanitation, fix a problem related to skills development in our area. Incubator 1 is going to provide me skills. Incubator 2 is going to provide me technology. Incubator 3 is going to provide me access to industry. So I'm going to be working with these 3 entities. But as far as you are concerned, you only talk to one entity, managing them, managing the solution, managing the program. All of that is my responsibility. In the process, I will also train those 3 incubators. Far better story. I think the more I'm learning and working with Pollinate, I feel that you guys are so well positioned as accelerators and incubators, as long as you get this narrative fixed perfectly. Now, if you go and speak about this narrative for the next 5 meetings, 10 meetings, they will shoot you down with all sorts of questions. Those questions are going to make you think and improve your narrative for the next 10 meetings you're going to go to. It's an iterative process, and within a matter of, like I said, 2 months to 3 months, you would have come up with a perfect narrative that answers majority of your donor concerns. Okay, so that is what we look for. I think I've put this into a figure in the next slide. Joshua, yeah. So this is, but one thing I missed is, I think the arrow going from the incubator to the incubatee could be a 2-way arrow, because the incubators are actually closer to the beneficiaries, to the end users. So they will have a lot of feedbacks to the incubators, and the incubators can give the feedback to the incubators, and then you guys can present a better solution to the CSR donor. So I'm not saying you need to work with all the 3 incubators all the time. You could say for one particular solution, you work with only incubator 1 and 3. For another solution, you work with 1, 2, 3. For another solution, you work only with 2 and 3. So you, with just the same set of incubators, you have 3 different ideas that you could pitch to a donor. And ultimately, we have to be ready to do customization, right? This is the need of the hour. Not all donor priorities are the same. So you meet 2 corporations. Depending on the founders, depending on their priorities, one corporation might be interested in financial literacy, another corporation might be interested in agriculture productivity, a third corporation might be interested in inclusion. That means they would like to see more women in the workforce. So you cannot, as long as the solution is more or less having it at a standard, yeah, I think that's a good prompt, Ariel. If you have any questions, I know I'm mindful of the time as well. If you guys have questions, feel free to raise your hand as using the emoji, or just keep typing it in the chat, because I can just deviate quickly and address those questions as well. So please note, by having this formula, you are able to produce 3 solutions instead of 1 solution, or combinations of more than 3 solutions by 1, 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 2, 3. So, it's about 5 or 6 solutions, but using only 3 incubators. Imagine if this is more. Imagine if it is more. Now, 50% of the funding that you receive can be for capacity development. That is your true purpose of accelerating these incubators, and 50% can be for the actual solution itself. So that one, the donors are very generous with. They will tend to understand and support you. Yeah. So this is thus setting the context of how this can work for incubators and incubatees. I'm not sure, at least till the time I was seeing the Mentimeter, I did not see anybody who was a incubatee who was attending this program. I think it's mostly accelerators. So I think that way you guys are a very good target group to understand how this works. Now, if we go to the next section, and I'll just take 1 minute to talk about it. Okay. So go on, Joshua. Yeah. So see, this is what we need to build, and it doesn't come overnight. It doesn't come overnight. It took me 20 years. When today we make about $10 million or more, it doesn't happen overnight. But the bottom line is, I think everything that you do should be towards that, right? So in terms of transparency, in terms of articulation, in terms of documentation. That's what I said. 20 years ago, everything seemed very expensive because we had no free tools and things like that. But today, there's a lot of tools available that you could use. AI is making it even more accelerated. Okay. We use a platform called Apollo and one more platform to do lead generation. For example, you just need to, if I want to look for contacts, many people were talking about contacts. Apollo is a lead generator. It will search and give you the right contact person for you to meet. Yeah, there are these tools, something that we will share with Pollinate, and they can actually give it to you. Okay, we use a lot of technology. Lucio, is it Lucio, Joshua? Lucius, or something like that. It's something we use also for lead generation. And then we use HubSpot for our overarching deal management. Yeah. So the motivation behind giving money is always the same: credibility. Okay. If you go on to the next slide. Yeah. Okay, so I think, like I said, many of you are already confounded even before you start meeting the donors. The donors are simple people like you, managers who are mostly locals from the area, so they understand what you're trying to solve, and they are quite generous. But at the same time, they have to follow protocols, and their protocols include due diligence checks. Do you have your registration certificate? Is it updated? In a country like India, there are certain rules and regulations, for you to have your certificate from the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, etc., etc. Your financial statement. Sometimes, if you're a new organization and you don't have a strong financial statement, believe it or not, they are quite okay with that. Okay, quite okay with that, provided they trust you. That credibility shines through. For that, you need to put together a good solution. Yeah, we have a system called Concept Framework in our system where we articulate within about 12 slides our entire idea, and we keep producing these kinds of things, at least 4 or 5 every week. And we realized over a period of 3 months, 6 months, almost all our ideas look very similar, which means to rehash an idea to a new donor becomes very easy. It takes us only 24 hours for us to put this 12 slider together. It used to take us 12 days before to make one deck like that. But now, after doing it for many years, we just need to tweak. We know the things that we need to tweak in a single idea concept, and then we have a completely new look and feel and a new pitch ready for another donor. So you will realize that you're going to get these economies of scale, as they say, the advantage of these customization once you have systems in place. That's why I keep talking about being consistent. Stick to a template and follow it. In some cases, if they're a large corporation, they have their own templates. Otherwise, they are very open to you suggesting an idea, and you suggest an idea which is very well structured, actually. Yeah. Now, the expertise challenge can be solved by your incubating pool. By the way, I know that some of you are accelerators. One is sitting in Ghana, another one is sitting in Nairobi. Maybe there are two in Kenya itself. This is an opportunity for you guys also to collaborate. Meaning you may have an incubator which is not in the other accelerator, but the solution or the expertise you're looking for could be useful if you tap into this incubator, because you are at a hub level, at the accelerator level, who's your cohort, they know who are your cohort. You could say, hey, oh, you want a technology solution for agriculture? I have an incubator which could support. So you could look at what we call fragmented leadership. It's not that you need that incubator all the time in your organization, but rather as you need the solution, you could just engage them. And that's how you get expertise. Okay. So collaboration is this building of trust between incubators or with academic institutions. Many of you probably are also linked with educational institutions. Do collaborations also with local organizations, including people like us, which is civil society organizations. Okay, so partnering for progress, as we call it in Assist, is something that has always worked for us and could work for you. These are not challenges that are very difficult to difficult to overcome, right? Let's go to the next slide, Joshua. Okay, now I'm going to show this one slide, okay, and I'm going to explain to you what is here, and then I'll stop here for some Q&A, right? So we have put together, and I'm sharing this with you, something which is a very confidential document. It's very detailed, but I'm just showing you the high level one because it's been made for us, but you can customize it as long as you follow the approach, right? So contact, connect, communicate, collaborate, and consolidate is how we approach our CSR particularly, okay? So the contact is lead generation. Now, in lead generation, we have our criteria. We look for certain industries, certain size of companies that we want to target. So the industries could be based on the incubators you have. For example, if you have one or two incubators in the agriculture space, you look for corporations which are supporting agriculture or corporations who are producing fertilizers, seeds, agri-equipment, because they will be more interested to support anything related to agriculture. So lead generation, before that, we do what is known as profiling. And then based on that, we come up with the lead generation. And once we have the lead generation, we target the leads by getting their contact information and emailing them. Now, we have a system where using technology, we set up these emails in sequence, and it keeps sending the same emails every week for up to 3 times. And so it will be for 3 weeks. Invariably, we have found in both Asia and Africa, we always get a response. Okay, either they're going to say sorry, or they'll say, okay, we are busy, or they'll say, okay, get in touch with us, something like that. Now, if you can, beyond emails, to do the calls as well, that will be fantastic. Particularly if you're starting up, I think you need to be aggressive and call people. Today, every manager is in LinkedIn. So we are always on LinkedIn and sort of nudging them. Hey, I sent you an email. Is there a way to connect? If you send a genuine email, a genuine request, just ask them for 20 minutes of the meeting. Invariably, people tend to help. I've always believed in it, and it's worked for us till today. It's working for us till today. Okay. The next one is the communicate phase. So the first 2 phases, you could actually get it done with the interns. So if you're thinking, hey, I don't have people for this, get an intern at least for a couple of months or a particular period, or even 1 hour a day. All you need is 5 contacts per day. That's 25 contacts a week. And you start connecting with them. Set out an Excel sheet or a Google sheet and start listing it down. By the way, contact management software, including Zoho, Salesforce, all of them are available for free licenses if you're just a single user. So we use these things, and you should use those things as well. So when it comes to communication, we have something called a pre-meeting research. My colleagues would send me who we are meeting, what is the LinkedIn profile, what was the previous work. So when we are talking to them during the meeting, we quote all of those things, saying, "Oh, I saw that you were doing some work in Mombasa. Could we know a little bit more? So who was your partner? Do you think we can do something similar, maybe near Nairobi, for example? Okay. So or can I do something like that in Mumbai, or can I do something like that in Cebu?" So by knowing the client, you cannot simply go there and only talk about the things that you want to sell. You want to know your client. You want to know the schools they went to. All of that is in LinkedIn. Okay, all of them are LinkedIn. If you're from the Philippines, invariably every manager you're going to meet, you're going to have their Facebook also, and you could just try to connect with them on Facebook as well. So where is the difficulty? Okay, but you need to be prepared. So if you know, "Oh, sir, I used to be also, I know a friend who studied in San Beda or LaSalle or whatever." So connect with on a school level and things like that. If you're thinking that you're going to have always perfect information and a perfect connection, either because of your father, mother, your uncle, never going to work. Okay, never going to work. You need to find your 6 degrees of connection. And that is why the pre-meeting action, we have a checklist that we use, saying, "Have you done this? Have we done this? Have we got the relevant information?" So for example, in our case, we've done about 300 projects. We will identify 5 project information relevant to their company. So if you're an agriculture company, we'll take about 3-4 samples and keep them ready, so that when we meet them, we will flash those things. If it's an online meeting, if it's an in-person meeting, we bring the brochures with us and give it to them. So all that is prepared by somebody relatively junior. Okay, but of course, if you're small, it can be done by you. As long as you systematically do it, you cannot just do randomly these activities. Once you've met them, you will have a set of action. They're going to simply say, "Sorry, you came at the wrong time. Come to me in October, because that's when I do my budget for next year." Fine. Okay? You don't need to burn a bridge. You don't need to get angry. You just say, "Okay, I'll be coming back to you." Or somebody would say, "Okay, I believe in what you guys are doing. I think I like the idea you're suggesting. Can you put it on a piece of paper?" That's what collaborate is all about. You put things on a piece of paper and start sending it to them. Okay. Now, there is one way you could productize things. So this is another important aspect. I want to just reflect on it for 1 minute. We go to the meetings and we have 2 approaches. Okay. We call it A2 or C3. A2, C3. A2 is where we have an idea already, and we would like them to adopt that idea and adapt it to their requirement. Okay, that's why it's called A2, adopt and adapt. Okay, so you already have an idea in your mind and you're pitching that. Okay, or you go there with an open mind and say, "We are a social good organization. We have these capabilities. Tell us the things that you would like to do." Yeah. So tell me, what is it that you're interested in? That is called C3, where we co-create, co-design, and co-implement. Yeah. So those are 2 options. So let me repeat. In every opportunity, you will come to a crossroad. Okay. When you are doing the communication. Okay. Where you are already ready with the idea and say, "If you give me an opportunity, I can present this and we would like you to support this." Or, "I'd like to present this and maybe we can tweak certain elements that will be more closer to your priority. For example, you want 50% of the beneficiary to be women, not a problem. We can take care of that. You want a new topic to be added in financial literacy about insurance, we can add that. Okay. So or we have this agriculture platform, but you would like to add something related to seeds or fertilizers, we could add it. So that means they adopt your idea, but they adapt it to their specific requirement. That's one way. The other way is you just go there and say, this is who we are. We have this incubating network. They do all this good work in a particular location. If you tell me what are your overall vision to do social good, maybe we can jointly think of some ideas and we will execute it for you. So either way works. Okay. So it's not like your idea did not get through. So remember A2, C3. That's our terminology. You could call it whatever you want. Your idea versus open idea. That's the way it is. So the idea is actually developed after the discussion in the collaborate phase. And it seems like 6, 7, 8 is a simple step, but from 6 to 7, it can go back and forth about 4 or 5 times, because you would present something, they'll say, I want you to change it. Then you change it. And then you would ask them, say, this is the money. And they'll go like, oh, no chance. I can't pay you so much. Can you scale it down? And we'll scale it down. And they'll say, oh, but we like it right now, but can you reduce the budget? I say, sir, if we help you with this, I cannot feed myself. And you go back and forth, and somewhere there's an agreement, and that's when you contract. So that's 6 and 7. There's a 6A, 6B, 6C before it becomes a 7, and 7 becomes a 8. So that's the 4 steps, which are the really important steps. The 5th step, which we always call it consolidate, is the importance of documenting all of these things. Very important. When somebody shuts their door, you got to know why they shut the door. Is it because you were too expensive, you lacked credibility, or maybe their priority was something and you were just completely off their radar? And you go to 10 meetings, and all the 10 meetings, it seems like whatever you're bringing to the table, nobody is interested. It's an indication. It's an indication that the market demand versus what you have to offer, there's a mismatch. Now, that requires profound thinking on what you want to do about it. That's a different story. But you need to update. Okay. And sometimes, like I said, one of them would say, get in touch with me in October. That you'll need to make a note so that you can go back to communicating again in October, because that's their financial year. Every year when we do this exercise, we realize already we know if it's India, if it's Vietnam, it's Philippines, which is the best season to approach corporations, which is the time we should already be preparing. We know that it is September, which is their budgeting season, October, where they really already decide what they want to do for 2025. So if you go in 2025 in January, very fresh after your Christmas holidays, New Year's, celebrating and saying, oh, we are the new kid on the block, we have this idea, they'll say, go take a hike. Come and see me in 2026 because I've already made my plans. So you have to know, and this you will know only when you go to the market. You will start getting educated that this is what the cycles are. Okay. And for somebody who said that it's a lengthy process, it is not. So if it is anything below $10,000, okay, $10,000, $20,000, the cycle time for a sale is less than 1 month to 2 months. If it's about $100,000, okay, it takes about 3 months. Okay. But from 3 months to 6 months, you could actually be doing this $100,000 to $200,000 very conveniently. But for corporations, anything below $20,000, the cycle time for taking decisions is less than a month, provided they have done budgeting, provided you are in their mind. So you need to go to them right now to find out when exactly is their budgeting cycle. In the list of questions we ask in the pre-meeting actions, we have a set of questions. We don't get perfect answers for it. Imagine you go meet a stranger for the first time and say, so may I know how much money you spend every year on CSR? They'll say like, who are you to ask me that question? I mean, they won't ask you that, but they'll be like wondering that. But if you have a good conversation with them, slowly you can ask, so how much did you fund this other incubator? How much did you fund the other NGO? How much did you spend on your education program? And slowly you could piece things together. Whereas in India, they have to report it in their annual report. this much money was spent on CSR. So you get an easier idea of how much money they spend every year. Okay, so where there is imperfect data, you may have to be very, very sort of smart about asking this question. Now, I know I've gone on forever. I'll tell you what is there in the other slides. It's a breakdown of this process. So I'm not going to go through those because it breaks it down. Joshua, can you go to the next slide, please? So you see that the phase one, lead generation. Look at that. I've already broken it down for you, friends. Just do it. Just follow it. Okay. Except that enable. Yeah, Shakawa, that's possible. Okay. Joshua, do you have any CF template with you right now that you can share?
Yes, sir, I can share.
Please do. Okay. Thanks, Shakawa. By the way, that's our name for how we present a solution. So if you go to the next slide, in the meantime, Joshua, sorry, I know you're managing both things. This IV, this is obviously available to all of you. Okay. I think either Ruod or Ariel or Tess is going to make sure you get a copy of it. But Pollinate will take care of that. Yeah. Okay. So for each phase, I've broken it down. Okay. I'm not going to, Ariel knows me very well that I will never manage my bloody time. So she's already probably like nodding off. Okay, there goes Sreeni. He promised me he'll finish it on time, and he's actually overshot his time. But I can't help it because I'm really, really, really very keen that you guys benefit from this. And that's why I'm more than happy to share. Ruod is based in the Philippines. For some of you, I saw Sabido, the Maradeka friends. Yeah. Salik, no? Is Sir Salik there from Maradeka here in this call? I doubt it. Who's there from Maradeka? I saw Maradeka before. Okay, anyway, so...
This is Hayria Abdul Aziz po, Communication Officer from Maradeka.
Maradeka. Please give my regards to
representing Sir Salik po.
Yeah. Please give him my regards. Yeah. Okay. His brother is also my very dear friend. Yeah. So okay. So it's there. So every phase, the breakdowns are there. In the process, if you need any other additional information, like an email template, come on, I'm sure you guys can write a better email than I do. But if you want to see a sample of how we write it, you can also get it. So go back, go to the next slide, Joshua. So again, communicate pre-mapping actions.
Sreeni, we do have one question in the chat.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Someone's asking if they don't have warm leads, it's their first time using CSR, suggestions for how to sort of start that cold list, and where to identify, I guess, some of those people. And CJ, let me know if I got that right, or feel free to unmute if you want to add a little bit more color to that. But maybe Sreeni, if you want to touch on that.
I think it's a very fair question. I'm going to start for the first time. Where do I start, right? CJ, I'm assuming, okay, you're from the Philippines, yeah? So for example, the usual suspects, yeah, San Miguel's, Aboitiz, Ayala's, you know the corporations already, and these organizations certainly have CSR. Now, how do you access them? I would go to, for example, in your case, I'm sorry to the others, but maybe some of the Filipinos will benefit from this. There is a list. There is a organization called the League of Corporate Foundation. In fact, week after next is their annual meeting. LCF, I'm typing it here, League of Corporate Foundations. Okay. Then there is something known as AF, the Association of Foundations. Okay. So the League of Corporate Foundations is a list of all foundations. It's an organization where all the foundations of corporations are members of. Okay. If you just go to the website or the Facebook page, you can see exactly. Yeah, yeah. Oh, Ariel, yes, you're absolutely spot on. Yeah, you could actually get their list already there. Okay, and then all the corporations there listed there might even have the names of the contact people. Simple as that. But you just get the name of the corporation, go to LinkedIn, and there you go, Ariel. You are the lead generator par excellence, actually. Yeah. So Ariel has already found it for you, CJ. So this is where you start your cold list. Okay. People who are committed to giving money because they are corporate foundation. The purpose for existence is to support things. Will they support you? Maybe not, right? But will they be in this future supporting you? 100%, provided you go and talk to them. Sun Life Foundation, Aboitis Foundation, Telstra Foundation, San Miguel Foundation. Everybody who's somebody is a member of LCF. Okay. And these are just the corporate foundations. On top of it, the regular corporates. You just have to Google. Today I was with Personal Collection. They have 1.4 million agents. Last year, they breached $100 million. They don't have a structured CSR program, but they have a good heart. They want to help people. I would just say Personal Collection, or I would put Mang Inasal, CSR manager in LinkedIn, and you would find the name immediately. And after that, you could search for contacts, and then you would find their emails also very easily. FB, LinkedIn, and make a target list. Particularly, CJ, I'm not sure which organization you're from, or which organization you are, or which area you're focused on in a thematic area, health, or you're an incubator yourself, and what are your incubatees portfolio. If you have that, you could then say, I want to reach out to IT organizations, IT, BPO, you have a lot in the Philippines. So I'll stop here, but that's the way to do it. Yeah. We all started somewhere cold, and it can be done. Okay. So I've given you two references, and Ariel was kind enough to get you the web link as well. Let me quickly see.
And Srini, we are running up on time, so maybe if you
Sure.
want to give some last
Sure.
kind of closing
Okay.
pieces of advice, and then we'll coordinate with Joshua to share any of the resources that you mentioned with the folks on this call for sure.
Sure. We just about on the last slide anyway. So I always get stuck here. Okay, so where do we stop here? There's nothing to stop. This is the beginning, actually, in my opinion. So all of you, get in touch with Pollinate, ask them for help. They've also asked you what other things that you want. So feel free to engage with them. Whatever we can share, we are happy to share with you. Okay, and we can provide you the resources that are needed. Okay, don't get intimidated. That's all I could say. If you just stick to consistency, okay, just tell yourself, I will reach to 10 people every week. Every week, that's 2 names per day. That's like, it hardly takes an hour, and you will get those 2 names searched, researched. You have a standard email. Okay, if you don't have a very good brochure, design one, very easy. Okay, have a very compelling narrative. Just ask for 15 minutes of that time. Make it very, very focused. Just don't ask for a meeting. Just tell them, I would like to have only 20 minutes of your time. You will be amazed, whether it's in the Philippines or India, in Kenya or Ghana, everybody is there to help. And these corporation people do tend to help. Minimum they can do is lend you their ear. And many of them would actually say, okay, maybe you are coming at the wrong time, but in my I know this other company which is doing something similar, because all these managers talk to each other. They have industry associations, and things like that. They talk to each other. They know what other programs are happening, and they could just connect you guys. Okay, they could just connect you guys. So even if they are not themselves directly going to support you, they could probably connect you. I know somebody asked for the CF Chakawa. I will make sure you get a copy of it. I wanted to share it and run it, but I think we are really running out of time. We will share it with you, please. Yeah. It's not rocket science. You will realize it's also only 4 sections, about 2 to 3 slides per section. And it helps you structure your thinking. Yeah, we'll certainly share it with you. Okay. So is there any other questions? Would anybody like to ask?
And maybe if anyone wants to, while they're thinking of their final questions, I'll make a mention that for those of you who are Pollinate Impact members or considering membership, we actually have a working relationship with Sreeni and Joshua and the team to actually help you all build out your CFs, your concept frameworks, and help you really develop those. So that was a very great segue, Sreeni. Thank you for that. So if any of you are considering that and would like some more one-on-one support on how to actually develop that for your individual organization, and I think Sreeni mentioned this, right? You tailoring it to whether it's a CSR foundation or whether it's a regular foundation, or depending on who you're pitching that to. So just to make a mention of that, to remind you all that that's an opportunity there. And if you're interested in taking us up on that, you can reach out to myself or Rod or Tess, and we'll just dump our email addresses in the chat so that you have them. And again, if you're not yet a Pollinate Impact member, but you really would like that level of support, you can reach out to us to explore membership, or if you want to get in touch with the Assist team directly, we can make the introductions. Thank you, Sreeni. Thanks everyone for joining.
All right, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.